could it be a personal condition?
Would you like to answer that?
Yes, I am. Government guidance on personal conditions is that this should be only used in exceptional circumstances. So the committee needs to come to a decision as to whether, you know, if it is minded to support the scheme, whether that's something that these circumstances are sufficiently exceptional. I don't know whether you have anything to add to that.
Can I just ask Councillor Oates, if there was a personal circumstances, would you be mindful to approve this?
Under normal circumstances, no, but because of all the development around Cropper Road, I am more inclined to support this type of application. Normally, and you have a look at the history of this site, we don't support applications like this because it can be a prelude to getting a house in the countryside. But when you see how many houses there are going to be built in that area in particular, and when you have a look at what's happened at the site that's had so many applications approved that now I think is skateboarding, then you know it just seems a little bit of a nonsense that we're trying to protect a little bit of countryside in what is becoming an urban area.
Before Mr Evans answers that, before the application came towards us this morning, I was looking at this and thinking, well, yeah, I've got to support the recommendations, but listening to the Mr Waite about the dangerous animals which are going to be are on the fields at present, and the amount of building which is going to take place in the foreseeable future, and the small area which is going to be surrounded by all these properties and industry, etc. It seems a little bit churlish that we're refusing an agricultural mobile home, as there is already a mobile home on there. And I'm quite in favour of supporting Councillor Oates' sentiments. So I'll hand it over to Mr Evans now.
I think just starting with that final point, Chairman, the existing caravan that's on the site there does not require planning permission. It's not being used as a residential property, and therefore is quite a different situation to what we're considering here. The site opposite has been granted permission for residential development. It's the area that's sort of the lighter colour on the plan, as pointed out by Mr Stell. Beyond that, there are areas which are indicated on our preferred option for the local plan as mixed-use development, and the idea is that the residential element came with an application that was also for commercial development as well. So it is a mixed-use scheme over there. In terms of allocations of sites, we obviously have to look for sites which go towards meeting our housing need, which has been identified. And therefore we have to look at identifying sites. But when you're identifying sites, you inevitably draw a line somewhere as to where that allocation stops. And on this occasion, in the vicinity of this site, it is along Cropper Road. The area to the right, as you look at the screen there, is all remaining as countryside, including the application site. There are other sites such as the Ramp City site, which was, as I understand it, a diversification scheme that allowed, was a horse riding place and then became a skateboarding centre. Again, the issues relating to dwellings in the countryside as opposed to commercial activity are dealt with very differently in government guidance. Government guidance still tells us that we should avoid having isolated dwellings in the countryside unless there is an identified and established need. That assessment has been carried out with the aid of the county land agent, who advises us that there is no such need. So harsh as it may seem, in line with the policies, the recommendation is one of refusal.
Regarding personal changes of circumstances, if the committee were mindful to approve?
Yes, Mr Stell's already answered that question, so I can only reiterate he's correct in what he says. The government advises that we should use personal conditions in only in exceptional circumstances. I suppose the issue here is that if there isn't a demonstrated need that's been established, why would we impose a personal condition if there is no need been established? So there is not, if the applicant has not established a need, why would we restrict the use to anybody else?
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Very interesting listening to Mr Evans and his government guidance and the land agent's role. It's the government guidance that's destroying all our countryside. And so I've lost the will to live when it comes to the countryside and the government's involvement as far as planning is concerned. And although I've read the report and the land agent's comments, and it's not a big longer stamp, the functional need and the viable need, there are some serious questions to be raised, because it's not a big farming unit. It's not like your dairy farm, and it is completely different. So I definitely wouldn't support a dwelling, but a mobile home, if we're going to have all this future development so near, and all the problems with security, it is a worry. So I'm a little bit, not on the fence, but I do sympathise. I don't know. I'll wait to see what everybody else has to say. Because I do respect the land agent's views. It isn't a big farming unit. It doesn't justify somebody living there full time. That is quite obvious. What is obvious is there is a problem with security, and it's only going to get worse if and when all this development takes place. So that was a waste of time, really.
Well, no, keep sitting on the fence. Councillor Armitt. Nolte, I've got Councillor Armitt, Nolte, Vice Chairman, Councillor Fiddler, Pounder and Chew.
It's a small arm, that's the problem. I think there's a few things on this. As this grows up, this is becoming... You're right, Pete. Sorry. I think this is going to end up more like a city farm than a farm. It's going to have houses around it, dual carriageways on both sides of it, skate parks, motorbikes. It's going to be an oddity in the countryside that they'll have some countryside in it. And if you take the safety issues, I think it becomes much more supportive towards the applicant. I find, if you take on page 4, the Highways Agency's comments, I mean, we had the farce from the Environmental Agency here last week when they were saying some of the stuff they said. And here, we sat here a few months ago, all of us knowing that to stick 280 cars out of those narrow roads from 140 houses on that road was going to be a disaster. And the Highways Agency said, that's fine. But they're a bit worried about 2 that might come out of a farm. It's the absolute lack of coordination and ability for these guys to think together we show that it could be a worry with a hedge, but it isn't for the 286 turning out the other way. It's absolutely farcical. If you turn to page 7, on the conclusion of the Land Agency, he says, I noted that there's no existence, no CCTV, no security. And yet we've seen photos of it all. I don't know if the Land Agency actually went there, but it doesn't in any way relate to the photos we've been shown and all the stuff that comes back here. We've got on here that, if we go with the applicant's words here, the Land Agency doesn't seem to know the law either and the way that business works, and yet he's disagreeing with the business and puts it in here as a negative. I think going through all of this, I also like the fact that you said that this isn't an agricultural activity, and is their opinion. If it isn't an agricultural opinion, then their opinion should be less important. And if it isn't agricultural activity, I don't know what it is when you're keeping cows on a piece of land. I think that my concern is if we're making another house in a mobile home, all this worries we always have about paying council tax, but that's a minor one. I also wonder if there is any opportunity, if we gave it for, say, 2 years or 3 years, with the 142 houses being built 2 metres across the road on a very skinny road, if one of those houses would become appropriate to the person as opposed to living in a mobile home permanently. So I would actually support the applicant in all the safety reasons that have been said and all the common sense reasons to look after these cattle and to protect children in the new housing, but I would put it in for a shorter period of time, possibly 2 years.
Councillor Nolte.
This application. The first one, it's been here 50 weeks. 50 weeks, and yet we're still not at a stage where we're clear on what we're doing. There's a lot of discrepancies within it. I mean, it says, like as Councillor Armitt says, there's no evidence of a 6-foot wall, and yet we've seen it. The CCTV and warning signs were pointed out on the photographs. We couldn't actually see them, but it also says that there's accommodation available in the area, which we're just told is one thing that's one dwelling that's worth £1 million. The whole thing is riddled with discrepancies. I feel personal permission for a mobile home for maximum of 3 years, and then we review it. I think it's been proved that there is need for somebody on that site, but I think also that we should. There should be discussion about where that mobile home is situated to make it clear. These are not domestic animals, obviously, and it is agriculture, quite clearly. I don't keep a cow in my front room. So so I'll go with... Oh! Would you like to take that back? What are you calling me, Councillor Armitt?
You're going with the flow, Councillor Nolte?
I'm going with the flow, and
Right.
if it hasn't been seconded, I'll second that proposition, or I made it's not been put forward.
It hasn't been put forward yet.
Can I propose a mobile home sited appropriately with a personal permission for a period of maximum 3 years?
The existing mobile home removed, even though it's not used.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Councillor Hardy. Legal officer.
Chairman, thank you. I was just wondering whether or not if members are considering a decision contrary to officer recommendation, we could just have a very short adjournment,
Yes.
maybe 10 minutes,
Yeah.
just to discuss the best way to address those concerns and how they can properly be formulated a decision.
I quite agree. Yeah.
Can I suggest that we conclude the debate, listen to if there's a seconder, and then before we go to a vote, have that discussion about the actual terms of that.
Quite agree. Okay.
I was just wondering whether or not it was appropriate to think in terms of a personal permission rather than a permission that ties into agricultural work.
Yeah,
That's
we
what
can.
I was
Yeah.
wanting to discuss.
Yeah.
That's
We
what
can look at
Okay.
that. We
Okay.
can look at that.
Right. Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this gentleman has been here on this site for a great number of years now, and up to this has been on 50 weeks, and right up till these last 50 weeks, things have been built around him, businesses, houses, and all of a sudden he's in a cleft stick, so to speak. I think there is a need for someone to be on site. If we do allow this, I'm going along the lines that we allow this application, but this mobile home, as has been already stated, should be in a position, I think what Mr. Stell said earlier, adjacent to the road, looking down the yard towards the entrance. I think that would be the best place for it. But I do think and feel that on this occasion we should allow this application. Thank you.
Councillor Fiddler.
Do you think we ought to have a manual on how to use these things? I refer to Councillor Speak just to remind the committee that it's not the present planning guidance that we need to address. It is our policy as a planning authority, a local planning authority, that we prevent dwellings in isolated countryside locations. It has been our policy to pursue that ever since I've been involved with planning at Fylde. Councillor Oates articulated the significance and importance of the county land agent, and I think we all appreciate that. And if you don't appreciate his involvement, then it's very difficult to come to a conclusion on an application of this type. The weakness in this type of application, we can all appreciate the functional and economic assessment. That's relatively straightforward. The complications always arise when you talk about security, when you talk about welfare, more subjective aspects of this type of application. There's obviously a strong feeling within the committee that some form of approval should be given, and should it be personalised. And you've heard that the guidance says it's got to be exceptional. There's got to be exceptional circumstances whereby you give a personal approval. This authority has, in the past, given such personal approvals. And I think the recommendation from Councillor Nulty that a personal approval for a term of 3 years to be reviewed at the end of that 3 years is probably a recommendation that will be accepted by this committee this morning. And the onus will be on you to say what are the exceptional circumstances that you've come to that conclusion. And all you need to do, in my mind, in an extremely simplistic way, is to say Cropper Road. Because Cropper Road is unique. I couldn't find an area within Fylde that in any way compares to that area. And I don't think I need to elaborate any more than what I've just said.
Thank you, Councillor Fiddler. Now, we've all heard the situation. I've got two speakers now. Councillor Pounder, have you anything to add to the debate?
Yes, I do. You're not. Yeah, there hasn't been said. Other than I have some serious concerns of the land agent, the discrepancies in what we've been told has gone on and what he's actually said or what I didn't see. They also, I'll go back to the piece of paper that has been given to us, which obviously come from the applicant. And the last 2 bullet points on the second page, we have submitted with our application a letter from a senior Lancashire County Council welfare officer who says it is essential for someone to be living on these premises for the welfare of the animals. So you've got the county land agent saying no, but you've got the welfare officer from the same organisation saying yes. Right, well, and then the final bullet point reads, the fire, police, vets, trading standards, welfare officer, RPA and the National Farmers Union all say that due to the incidents that have happened, we should be living at the farm. So I think there's enough evidence there to justify us giving a permission, albeit a temporary one, that can be reviewed at a later stage.
Councillor Chu, you're next. Have you got anything to add to the debate? Thank you for that. Can I just ask, before we move to yourself, why 3 years? No. Councillor Nulty, Councillor Fiddler, why 3 years?
I think it was yourself that said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no. 3 years.
Being realistic and knowing how.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm going to let you have your say now before we have a 10-minute recess, because I honestly believe that the committee are moving towards an approval in this application. So, some sort. So, a limitation application that's what I'm come to. First of all, before we do that, I've not got an approver or a seconder because it's still woolly what we've got in front of us.
I wasn't woolly. I wasn't a sheep. I was a fierce cattle. I think I spelt out
just a
more or
minute,
less.
Councillor Nolte. Andrew, if you want to say your bit, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide some clarification to the point raised by Councillor Pound. I've not seen this document that's been circulated, but I do have the letter that's referred to in it. The letter isn't particular to this farm. It's a general letter that's been sent by the Animal Health Officer at Lancashire County Council. It's undated, and it refers to the keeping of livestock being a full-time occupation requiring constant observation and attendance. It refers to the needs to look after young stock in particular, and it recommends that a farmer or a member of staff is on site at all times, particularly if breeding stock is kept. Now, I'm not sure whether there's any breeding stock undertaken at this particular site because of the sort of transitory nature of the business. It refers to livestock being worth an easy, substantial deal of money, easy target for opportunities thief, resulting in significant financial loss on the part of the owner. But it's not, like I say, it's a general guidance note for prospective farmers rather than specific to this business.
Okay, Councillor Nolte, are you proposing? Are you proposing? And I need a second.
I am proposing.
Roughly, what are you proposing? Roughly, because it'll get sorted out in the next 10
I am
minutes.
proposing a mobile home only to be sited appropriately in discussion with the officers on a personal basis to the personally tied to the applicant for a period of, and I'll be guided as to what anybody else thinks, but I'm minded to 3 years.
Yep.
The other mobile home to be removed at the same time. I think that covers it.
And the seconder, please.
I said person.
Councillor Hardy, thank you. We'll have a 10-minute recess. Come back 12, just after 12, please, if you could. In which case we'll sort out everything. By the way, there's no lunch ordered.
It is. I don't want to complicate it.
You don't want to complicate matters.
You wouldn't without.
You don't have to name names, do you? You got one?
Pens.
Are you all right for it?
Okay, everyone.
You've got a lift on Friday. With Frank.
You can come back.
Oh, fine.
All right. Mr. Evans is going to read out the recommendation. Okay, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, first of all, were the committee come to a different recommendation to, a different decision to the recommendation of officers, there is a requirement to state why that decision has been reached. So, in regards to that particular element, it's that having heard the evidence before the committee considers that an essential need has been established for safety and security. For safety and security of the site and the welfare of the livestock upon it. So that's the reason for this decision. In terms of the details of what's being approved, there clearly needs to be some discussion with the applicants in regard to the siting of the caravan, etc. So it's not considered appropriate at this time to actually grant a permission at this committee. So the recommendation is one of delegating powers to approve the application to myself, subject to, and the first thing is receiving a suitable and satisfactory revised plan amending the location of the caravan. The second is that the permission should be for a mobile home and should relate to a period of 3 years only. Third, that the use of the caravan for residential purposes shall only be in relation to the agricultural business operated on this site. The fourth is that the existing caravan shall be removed from the site, and then there will be a fifth caveat, which will be any other conditions necessary as a result of the ongoing discussions. So that's what's been agreed with the proposer and seconder. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, everyone. I think that's fairly straightforward and clear. As a proposer and a seconder, quite happy?
Yeah, Chairman, can I point out that we are minded to approve. It's not that we're not doing it at this committee. It's simply that the red edges, etc., don't match what we've got at the minute. So it's. So
I think that's fairly straightforward, everybody. So yes. So although we're not exactly saying today, yes, we are mindful to approve, subject to, and there's delegated powers. Okay, all those in favour, please show. That is a totally unanimous decision. Thank you. Item number 3, and Councillor Hardy is leaving the room.
Thank you very much.
Just in case, I just reinforce people, there's no lunch provided today, and it's 12:10.
Oh, is it raining? Horrible. Oh dear. I wasn't supposed to do that.
I just remind everyone we're still on webcast. And it's...
Chairman, right, thank you. This application relates to the current premises of AFC Filed, which is known as Callama Park. It's behind the Burley Arms. I'm sure we know where it is, but that Burley Arms is the pub there. Ray Green that way, Wharton that way, Hillock Lane up there. You've got obviously the existing football stadium, which supports their current activities in the Premier Division of the Northern Premier League. The application in front of you is there's 4 separate elements, 3 retrospective and 1 prospective. The retrospective elements first, starting with the biggest one, is a terrace, a covered terrace that runs down behind the far goal. Alongside that is a groundsman's hut. Alongside near the end of the access, the Burley Arms down there, is another sort of porter cabin type structure which is used as a match control room. And then the prospective element is here, which is a covered seating terrace for 72 people, I think the capacity is. Just to put that, perhaps give it a bit of a view, this is you won't be able to see because it's quite low, but this is a view across the pitch. So that's the terrace building that's been constructed at the far side of the ground. You've got existing stands that have been there for some time down the long side, the long touch line. So this is where the executive boxes are, and then you've got a small seating stand here, and then this is the bit that's the subject of the application. In terms of the other elements, that's the match day control room. More excitement, that's the groundsman's hut. The seating stand is not there yet, but it's going to look similar to the one that's already there, which looks like that, closer up. So it's a small 3-4 row stand. The application is on committee following an objection from Wharton Parish Council, who've referred to the retrospective nature of the application being their suspicion is it's a deliberate ploy to gain support by doing the work first without permission. Secondly, they refer to the stated intention of the club to relocate, so that would make these facilities redundant. They also refer to the need for increased parking and traffic issues, and to noise from the tannoy and conflict with policy track 12. Turning to the planning merits, the site's in the countryside, where policy SP2 is generally restrictive to development, but does allow works that are essentially needed for the continuation of an existing facility and does not harm the character of the countryside. AFC Files' use of Kellerman Park is considered to be, it's considered to meet that test. These works are not something that they've done necessarily because they wanted to. They're a requirement of the ground regulations, which require certain amounts of covered seating and covered terracing around the ground to play in the current league that they're in at the moment. They need to be able to hold 500 spectators in covered terracing, so that's why that's a requirement. The other side to it is that it shouldn't harm the character of the countryside. The site's located some distance from public vantage points, and having looked at it from, for example, Hillock Lane, there are you see the ground, particularly you see the floodlights, but I don't think it's something that you see. They're not tall structures, they're 3.5 metres tall, that sort of size. So don't feel that it's in itself, particularly the works proposed here, are particularly harmful to the character of the countryside. So on that basis, we feel that the application is one that we can support, and therefore it's on the agenda, recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Speak, you're first.
My question is, if in the future this football club was to move, does all this have to be removed and taken down and put back to countryside? And if not, should it not be made a condition that in the event that they relocate in the future, this should all be taken down?
I had discussions, you probably remember an earlier application for AFC filed to build a facility at Ray Green. That was about 3 years ago, possibly 2 years ago. But clearly that didn't get planning permission. Nothing's happened. AFC filed are still here, and whilst they may well be likely to submit a planning application, there's no guarantee that's going to be approved. There's no guarantee as and when it's going to be built. So it could well be that AFC filed continue to play at Kellermer Park for 5 years, for 25 years, for 125 years. It will be difficult for us to second guess the fact that they would want to move out of here at any time, and therefore I think it's probably difficult for us to put a condition on this application to require those facilities to be only there whilst AFC filed are. One thing that we did consider in my discussions with them about when I was dealing with the application for the Greenlands Farm, Ray Green scheme, was what would happen with the existing ground, and whether that could be a requirement of, if they were to move, what was going to happen to the existing ground. Could they then be required to sign a legal undertaking to remove those facilities at that time? Because that application was eventually recommended for refusal, that never got progressed. There's also the view that the facility there may well be beneficial to other sporting facilities. BAE Wharton may have a use for it. Junior teams, I don't know, but I suspect, or I suggest that that's not something that we would look to support it, or we would look to include on this application, and consider it if and when AFC